Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's day 331 of our fight for freedom, and now joining us online will be Maria Mezentseva from World Economic Forum in Davos, head of the permanent delegation of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Miss Maria, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Miss Maria, what's going on with the forum? What did our delegation brought there and how our messages are perceived there? Thank you very much for your question. It's very pleasant that yet another World Economic Forum has not only the colors of its brand in blue and yellow patriotic colors of the banner of Ukraine, but Ukraine remains permanently on top of the agenda of the forum. It was proved during the addresses in the main fields of the forum by, for example, Mrs. Zelenska, who represented the 10 main items of the formula for peace by our President Zelensky, and it's very important that she handed the file to the colleagues from China who are about to hand it to the Mr. Xi, the president of China, and it's very interesting to see the development of the visions and narratives. We can compare them to April or May when there was a post-COVID forum and Ukraine was still very loud. The Russian house turned into a war crimes house, and that was the topic which opened actually the Ukrainian house with the slogan Ukraine is you. That was the philosophy to call all the colleagues to feel themselves Ukrainians, and in accordance with the statistics of the United Nations, the brutal Russian aggression against Ukraine caused the losses and affected the lives of the citizens of more than 90 countries all around the world, and 1.7 billion of the people all around the world. So we're talking about the subjects that were discussed in the fields of the summit in terms of food security, energy system, the changes in supply of electric power. We know how our colleagues from Germany managed to lower their dependency on the Russian gas to less than 10%. It means that those changes are possible. They're possible even within the shortest terms, and such resolutions should have been taken in support of Ukraine as well. We didn't omit the subject of responsibility of Russian Federation for war crimes against humanity, of their genocide nature. As a couple of panels were devoted to them, and they overlapped with the visions of compensation mechanism, because we know that currently there are frozen assets of the Central Bank of Russian Federation in amount of more than $350 billion. So we're talking about the assets in Switzerland itself, which was the host of the forum. We see how purposeful was the speech of President Zelensky. He was speaking during Ukrainian breakfast and in the fields of the main platforms of the summit, and we're expecting for important moments in the war, and he responded to the questions about the Ukrainian Crimea. I loved his quote that it's our sea, it's our pain, it's our Crimea. Give us your weapons and we will liberate the ours. Well, I may not be just very precise, but this is how I remembered it, but it caused very turbulent applause, very active support. We've seen how the leaders of the countries of the world support us. For example, Andrzej Duda, who attended Ukrainian House with the representatives of the deoccupied territories, who arrived to the forums, the activists, the volunteers, the Ukrainian children who were under temporary occupation, temporarily imprisoned, the mayors of Ukrainian cities. And it's, for example, the mayor of temporarily occupied Melitopol. They all had their speeches during the opening of Ukrainian House. It was great pleasure to hear our friend Boris Johnson. His quote was more or less the follows: "Don't talk about Putin, don't pay attention to him, pay more attention to Ukraine, talk more about Ukraine." His messages were very straight, just as well as the messages of our American partners. Today's historic meeting in Ramstein, the briefing of which will happen at 16:30 Kiev time, it will bring very tangible results in terms of military aid. We've heard the announcements about certain types of weapons like tanks. More partner countries are ready to give us more tanks. I asked our Swiss colleagues why there are attempts to accuse them about non-provision of military aid. We know that Switzerland stopped being neutral starting from 24th of February when they recognized the armed aggression against Ukraine, when they supported synchronously supported the sanctions against Russia. And our first deputy on file, the legal consequences of the war aggression. We consider compensation mechanisms. We cover the war crimes there, and we give the vision for the summit of the ministers of foreign affairs of 46 countries, which this forum will be happening in Iceland. So the Swiss deputy will be the head on this file, and we prepare the proposals for the support, and this issue will be voted in Strasbourg next week. We have great expectations from Davos. I call them the micro projects for the people that have macro effect. So we're talking here about our permanent partners, Zurich Insurance, top 5 insurers of the world, who provide insurance services in more than 220 countries around the world. They keep helping Kharkiv region, they keep helping Donbass, and they want to expand to Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, which suffered and keep suffering from Russian aggression. We're talking about allocating $500,000 Swiss francs for procurement of high-capacity generators, 120, 150 kilowatts, and to cover the daily needs, the basic needs of the people, like warm clothing, and the stoves, the furnaces. So it's the support of national manufacturer as a contribution to Ukrainian economy. I'm happy to report about the announcement of the event which is about to happen in the capital for this company, I mean in Zurich, and more of our representatives will be engaged in this event. I mean the High Ambassador Ms. Venediktova, who was preparing to this event to discuss, so she will join to discuss the projects of reconstruction with the First Lady on the projects on humanitarian aid, the aid to the children of Ukraine, and more topics that may be related to some specific projects, specific aid. It gives hope, it gives energy to move further on and to demonstrate our partners that the funds, the charity aid that they provide to the specific spots is being used in an efficient manner, and the people who receive that aid, they appreciate it a lot. So I was able to report about our previous projects in Kharkiv region and other parts of Ukraine, and to pledge support for further projects. I would like also to emphasize that in the fields of Davos, many people talk about the fading of this attention to Ukraine, but I like the thing that many speakers who calculate the losses, that they express this idea. We know that 350 billion losses is a little bit lowered amount which was calculated by the World Bank. The figure by Ukraine is bigger. So there was a thought that if we don't help Ukraine right now in supply of heavy military equipment in economic sphere, if we don't support the further section, if we don't implement the compensation mechanism, we don't create this special war crimes and aggression crimes tribunal, if we don't do it right now, all the costs or direct economic help or cheap loans, it will have way bigger price if our partners postpone those resolute steps. My feeling is that everything will happen just as President Zelensky is asking, and we want to see this support today in Ramstein. Miss Maria, thank you very much for this information. We understood from this forum that all the civilized countries understand that there is genocide going on, that many things that they keep talking about the same things that we talk about, bringing the war criminals to liability, about the compensation. But was there a discussion of the recipe, how to stop the aggression in this international platform? Were there any interesting proposals? Well, you know, everybody doesn't really mince words anymore. So the statements of the Americans with regard to Crimea that comes from different sources, we expect for the provision of such types of weapons that can work on our sovereign territory on Crimea, just as President Zelensky, well, he emphasized the peninsula separately. The key to liberation of Crimea is the liberation of the cities in Zaporizhia region and stabilization of Kherson region. But there is a drastic difference. I remember our first trip to Strasbourg, our first meeting when we were trying to exclude Russian Federation from Council of Europe. Yes, we were supported, but nobody was waiting for this war to go on for, like we see today, 9 years and 11 months of the full-scale invasion. That we will need such resources, that we will ask for such resources, and even in the resolution of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, we were able to add an amendment for Ukraine to increase the supply of the air defense systems. For the organization who deals with the human rights, it was an anomaly to include such an item. So I have to say that the partners understand that the tragedy that happened in Dnipro just before the forum, it was a civil target that was destroyed by the Russian X-22 missile. They understand now that yes, we need these air defense systems, that there are hundreds of such missiles left in Russia. It was very pleasant, when pleasant is not probably a proper word, but everybody was shocked by the tragedy that happened recently, and availing myself of opportunity using this broadcast, I want to pass my condolences to the families of all the relatives and close ones our friends perished, the real professionals from the key ministries, one of the key ministries of our country. So this is why all of this is seen by our partners as the reality that they live through with us. And obviously now it's not our words that convince them, not even the pictures from those spots, from those places of tragedies. They say, Maria, we don't want to go to Kiev. We were there. We've been there. We want to go to Kupiansk, to Kharkiv region, to Kherson. We want to see what's going on in Zaporizhia. What's the situation there? To go to Mykolaiv or Nikopol, which are being shelled on a daily basis. So this personal feeling of pain, I think that it changed a lot of things, and it expedited the process of decision making, of this support. But I want to emphasize one thing that our partners were also talking about, just as well as the representatives of our delegation. Let's not forget on focusing on the global south. I mean the African continent, the Latin America, the partners in the Middle and Far East who can understand our pain. Certain economic issues, or as we demonstrated it to African partners, the fact that they don't receive the Ukrainian grain, they have no well, now it's resumed, thanks God, but they didn't have access to grain supply from Ukraine. Now that the grain from Ukraine program initiated by President Zelensky started working with the support of Turkey and the United Nations organization, but it's not the way it should be happening. We should move along the legal track, and we have to keep emphasizing that Russia illegally sits on its place, takes its seat in its Security Council of United Nations. So I hope to see the result in the early, maybe middle spring, though this is my small forecast for the victory of Ukraine. I'm not getting our partners are not getting tired to reiterate about how proud they are of how resilient Ukraine is. And some colleagues were saying, like, let's imagine that this plan that Russia had, fall of Ukrainian power, fall of Ukrainian authority in 3 days, capturing of Kiev in 3 days. So everybody remembers how President Zelensky reacted, who represents his country now, his inner force. So now we can review those negative scenarios that, thanks God, did not happen. So we can't wait for the results of Ramstein. We can't wait for the results of PSC next week, and then we're coming back home and we fulfill our obligations on the European integration track. I hope you've seen the voting of European Parliament yesterday. I did not expect such a figure yesterday, honestly. Somebody was commenting my post on social networks, so give us the list of countries, of those 19 countries who were withholding and who were abstaining, and about 30 countries against. I don't remember anything similar. And this voting, it also covered Belarus and dictator Lukashenko. We know that the territory of Belarus is used for training of Russian armed forces and for movement of Russian forces, and to provide the alternative way of offensive to our country, to maintain us in high readiness mode. So it's very important that the part of the document is devoted to this. So we move further on to our work that we will start in Strasbourg this week already, the meeting of political forces. I can announce that On Monday, you will be able to hear some interesting news about the top offices in the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, the heads of the committees, and the office of the President of PSI, which will be taken by the representatives of our delegation. And I can't wait for this news. So we're on the road. We will be on the road, but we're still ready to work in the interest of our country to defend our independence and sovereignty in diplomatic front. Thank you, Ms. Maria. We have questions in the studio. Please go ahead. Ukrinform, Irina Udonenko. My question is as follows. Could you please tell us if there were countries in the forum which would have been loyal to Russian regime, and what do they say? What's their position with regard to the war? Thank you, Ms. Irina. I haven't noticed any of such colleagues. Moreover, I want to mention that one of the reporters of Reuters, he's of Indian origin, but he works in Europe, he expressed his support. I didn't really cover the track of India, but even during the addresses of the Indian House representatives, it's very interesting that our topic was in Greece's house and Middle Eastern houses who have very powerful agenda. So I haven't heard anything like that in Indian house. I know what you mean. Those tentacles which reach the forum to express their non-support or some remarks. No, I haven't felt anything like that. There was a very powerful feeling of support, this perception of support. So our partners were in Paris in support of the tribunal. You remember how the French parliament voted this important resolution about the tribunal. So there was a prosecutor from International Criminal Court. You know that International Criminal Court cannot consider the crimes of Russian aggression, but some of the judges, they keep develop this statement that, well, we keep fighting against. I've seen a very different vision, a different opinion. The partners, they want to be together in this victory, in this joint victory. They want this victory to be the victory of everybody, to stand on the right side of history. So it was my pleasure not to hear any statements like those, and not even anything provocative. And Ms. Irina, I also want to add that in a view that the forum was going on for about a week, almost 6 working days, it was physically impossible to be present in all the platforms there, but for what I've seen, there were no satellites of Russian Federation. Ms. Maria, we appreciated that you found time to join our broadcast. Thank you for the information that you provided right from spot. I'm reminding you, joining us was Maria Mezentseva, the head of permanent delegation of Ukrainian Parliament in PSI. Our next briefing is at 13:30. We planned Mr. Boris Filatov to join us online, the mayor of Dnipro, and we will talk about the situation in the city and about the tragedy that happened recently in Dnipro. So bear with us, work together for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.